Oh, it worked.
Please introduce yourself for the record and then proceed with your testimony.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Robert Peoples. I'm a scientist, so I'm here today to try to share with you facts and information based on the experience we've had in the CARE program over the last decade and a half plus. I am one of the founders of the original CARE organization and was fortunate enough to participate with members from Minnesota in the creation of CARE, with obviously good intentions along the way. What I would like to do today is just touch on some highlights and let you know I'm available to try to answer your questions follow-up, whether they're here or subsequent to this hearing. Just as a reminder, the mission of CARE that was agreed to by the members when we created CARE is to facilitate a carpet industry-led initiative to find market-based solutions for the reuse and the recycle of post-consumer carpet. CARE was signed into existence on January 8th, 2002, and obviously Minnesota was one of the key signatories to that agreement. I wanted to share with you a few thoughts about why it is so hard to recycle carpet. It's built to last, and as a result, it's an extremely durable material, which makes it hard to take apart at the end of its life. When you take apart a multi-component system, the value that's created by those components is determined by their purity. When you have intimate mixtures of these materials, it becomes very difficult to separate the components and therefore penetrate the higher value portions of the market. It's expensive to do that. We compete against virgin materials. Virgin material prices are set by the price of oil. So when oil is down, as we've seen it plummet as low as below $30 a barrel, right now it's back up and fairly stable in the mid-50s. Our virgin raw materials are still relatively low in cost, which makes it very hard for the recyclers to compete for those markets. There's also a certain volume of post-industrial material that comes from the manufacture of original virgin-based goods. Those materials tend to be very clean. They tend to be colorless in many cases, so therefore much easier to use and more desirable. And they sell at a price that's below virgin, which makes price competition, again, difficult. Each recycler that we have in the United States, and there's about 24 or so, operates a different process. So there's a great deal of complexity in terms of how do you actually go about collecting, taking a carpet apart, and then use its components to manufacture new products. The products that we have available to us today are fairly limited because of some of the limitations around color and purity of the materials, but I want to share with you that they are growing, and I'll speak to more of that in just a moment. Anytime we collect and try to reuse or recycle a material requires us to have products to put it into, but more importantly, markets to buy those products. The markets that are buying products made from post-consumer carpet today are fairly limited in scope and represent another one of the challenges. And finally, tip fees that people have to pay to send material to the landfills. Low tip fees obviously hurt our ability to get the economics right. Said another way, it's cheaper to send something to the landfill than it is to try to reuse or recycle it. So let me share with you, and if you'll indulge a scientist for a minute, just a little bit about how carpets are put together. This is
Dr. Peoples,
yes, ma'am.
I just want to make sure you realize we have other bills tonight. I'm not sure how long your presentation is, so if we stick to the bill, that would be really helpful.
Okay. I will do my best to do that. I was told I had about 6 to 8 minutes, so I tried to prepare to share that with you.
All right.
Just to give you a feel for the complexity, there are 5 different polymers that make up the different forms of face fiber. So when you look down at a carpet, you're looking at a material. There's multiple types. It's put together with a backing and an adhesive, which is yet different chemical components, and that adhesive is filled with an inert mineral filler, which again, it creates another difficulty. I said this was residential carpet. I won't go through the details of commercial carpet. If you'll note at the bottom of the slide, we know from experience that it costs 3 to 4 times as much to recycle a commercial carpet because of the nature of its construction versus a residential carpet. What's going on around the United States right now? I've already alluded to the difficulty in outlets. We have over half of our recyclers in the last 2 years have shuttered their operations because of the challenges we're facing, in part exacerbated by what happened with National Sword I think Representative Hansen may have referred to that in his comments. National Sword, basically the country of China curtailed 95+% of all exports into their country. And even though very little old carpet or used carpet goes to China, all of the material that couldn't go to China had to stay in the U.S. or in Europe, which created a competitive environment for the materials that we were trying to sell in the marketplace. Said another way, it took the economics or the legs out from under the carpet recyclers. So that's been a challenge for us. I'm not going to try to go through each one of these bullets because you can read those, but I do want to point out that over the life of this program, I've done a recent study, and I have an Excel model to try to understand how much has been invested by the carpet industry members and by the entrepreneur community that's trying to practice the technology of recycling. And I was pretty surprised when the number added up excess of $500 million. That, to me, is an example of just how very difficult this challenge is. To spend that much money and know we're still struggling with trying to figure out how to make it work commercially is a testament to how difficult it is. I did want to share with you one example. A major company spent over $25 million in 6 years to start up new technology. This is a multi-billion-dollar international company with deep engineering talent. After 6 years, they shuttered the operation because it did not work. It couldn't work the way they wanted it to. So they're back to the drawing boards. Again, an example of the complexity. To just touch on highlights in California to give you a feel there, we've been running that program for about 8 years. We've spent more than $45 million in subsidies paid out to the recyclers. We've given out more than $5 million of grants, and we're still trying to figure out how to get the recycling rates up in the state. If you look at the recycling rates, they are higher than they are in the rest of the country, but they're relatively stable. They're not climbing at this point in time. If you add up those expenses plus all the expenses to run the program, we've spent over $65 million over the last 5 years, which equates to 31 cents per pound for every pound of material that's being recycled. Not inexpensive. I'll let you read the rest of the details on that. I will mention that the California assessment rate when we started this program was a nickel a square yard, and everybody thought that would be enough to fund this program and be successful. That number has gone up 700% since we started, and today it's at 35%. Since Minnesota is a state that has to deal with urban and rural areas, I will share with your experience in California has told us that it's a minimum of 3 times more expensive to collect and transport carpet from rural areas than from urban areas. You've heard a little, some comments on the impact of sales. These are the sales in the state of California since 2013. You can see not only a decline, but an escalating rate of decline in sales, and you could see the assessments that have been charged over time. And the impact that trying to put in place a assessment like this has on sales going forward. Bottom line, CARE as an organization has a lot of experience. I'm trying to share that with you in a very short time frame here. The largest recycler that we have in the U.S. has seen his volumes decline by 2/3 in the last couple of years because of the macroeconomic factors they're facing in the marketplace. To do this, we know it would require very large subsidies. It will impact carpet sales, and it will cost carpet jobs. But I'm here to tell you there is some good news. Market-based forces are starting to respond to the investments and the patience we've had. I just came from a 3-day meeting in Washington, D.C., which is a major carpet or major plastics recycling event, and for the first time, I had conversations with a number of major global international corporations seeking input on how they can secure the flow of post-consumer carpet materials to meet their demand for recycled content. It's being driven by global interest around sustainability to tackle these problems. The brand owners, so people that make Coke and Pepsi and Evian water and such, are now facing those consumer pressures that are starting to ask for post-consumer content in their products. There have been major investments made by a number of companies. I have them listed up here. You heard from Fiberon's representative just a few minutes ago. These folks have invested tens of millions of dollars now and are preparing to consume post-consumer carpet. This is
Dr. Peoples,
Yes,
we're
ma'am.
well over 9 minutes now, and if you want to send the PowerPoint to our staff, we can send that out to the committee. But we,
Yes,
if we
ma'am.
get to your final words, that would be helpful.
My further words are that I believe we're on the cusp of the carpet recycling industry transforming from a nascent organization trying to figure it out to the beginnings of the global chemical enterprise seeking our materials and willing to make investments to do that. So I believe we're on the right track. When we started, we have a blank sheet of paper. Less than 20 years to get where we are, I think, is pretty good progress, given the fact we also went through a major recession in the middle of all of this. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and I beg your patience with me. Being a scientist, sometimes it's not easy to be concise.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any other members of the audience who would wish to testify on this bill?